Welcome everybody to my podcast. I have Marissa Sacco on. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you got into dogs.
Yeah, so I got into dogs when I was fairly young. I always grew up with dogs, and then I started volunteering at our local shelters and doing work with them. My family fostered a lot of dogs throughout the years. So that's kind of where I got into dogs, was basically just lots of hands-on with them, working with them in the shelters. And then as I got older, I got into training them myself.
Tell us a little bit about all the dogs that you have, what their names are, their breeds, what they do.
Yeah, so we have 4 dogs. Paisley was our first dog that my husband and I got together. He is now 8 years old, yeah, and she's like a cattle dog mix. And then we have Kona, who we got 2 years later. She's 7 right now, so she'll be turning 8 in a few months. Got her off Craigslist.
Sorry.
It's okay. I got her off Craigslist, not knowing better, didn't know really anything about, getting from a reputable breeder and stuff. So I got her from Craigslist. And my intentions with her was to train her as my service dog, but because she didn't have the right temperament, I ended up washing her. And then that's when I got Bosco, who's now 5, and he's my current service dog. He's a working line German Shepherd. And then I got my last German Shepherd, Valen, back in 2020, so she's 4. And she is a working line German Shepherd.
Tell us a little bit about Vasco and what to look for in a breeder when you're looking into getting a service dog prospect.
So there is a lot of things to look for in a breeder when you're looking for a service dog prospect. My recommendation is always to ask if, they've placed previous service dogs before, what types of service dogs they've placed, do they have experience training any service dogs, what about if the parents are health tested. That's super important, obviously. Yep. And then it depends too, you want to make sure you tell the breeder what you need as a service dog, especially there's so many different types of service dogs. So if you're looking for, a medical alert dog, do the parents have, lots of hunt drive? Are they natural track? Even just natural trackers in the sport is a good thing to look for when looking for a service dog prospect too. If you need a medical alert dog, and just lots of health testing, make sure, because German Shepherds are so prone to having hip dysplasia, elbow dysplasia. So that's really important too. To make sure that the parents are health tested, obviously.
And then temperament wise, what were your requirements? What were you looking for there?
So temperament wise, I wanted a medium drive, medium energy. It could be medium to high drive is what I was looking for. But definitely preferably medium energy. A good hunt drive is what I was looking for. Very dependent on the handler, natural engagement, workability was really important.
What about food drive? Are you looking for a dog medium food drive, high food drive?
As far as food drive goes, it could have gone either way. They could have had medium to high food drive, or high food drive. So I mean, as far as working with Vasco and training him, he has medium food drive. Sometimes it was harder to get him motivated to do tasks or learn them. Instead, I'd have to use a toy to motivate him.
In your journey of training Vasco to be a service dog, what challenges did you face? What obstacles did you overcome?
So he was honestly amazing from the get-go. I really started training him when I brought him home, basically. And once I kind of built a foundation and built a relationship with him, I started bringing him to my college classes with me.
I remember those days of you posting that. That's how long I've been following you.
That's crazy. He was 3 months old when I started bringing him to classes with me.
Oh, wow.
And I really wanted him to establish like an off switch because that was really important to be able to sit through like, I had like 3-hour classes.
Yeah.
So that was really important. Bringing a puppy for long classes can be difficult. So finding, things to like entertain them, bully sticks, chews, or exercising them a bit before class. But one of the obstacles we faced was definitely as he grew, he's such a big shepherd that like trying to fit him in spaces, like when we would fly, trying to tuck him in tight spaces was always difficult. Or when we would be like in an Uber, those were always difficult because you'd have to, put the dog on the floor in the car and fit them like in between your legs. So that was always difficult.
Yeah.
I didn't have too many issues, but one big issue, it would be like access issues for sure. People would like question you, is that a service dog? He can't be here. I didn't face too many of those issues, but it did definitely come up, and I would have a hard time trying to explain to the business like he's a service dog, he's allowed here, he's a task trained medical or service dog.
Yeah.
So, I didn't come across that too much, but when I did, there was sometimes an issue, and I just like left because there was nothing I could do really except, explain that he was a service dog.
Obviously, businesses legally cannot tell you that you can't go there, but when you're there in the moment, it's just like, do you want to sit there and argue with them all day and
Right.
make it a whole scene? Sometimes it is easier just to remove yourself from the situation and move on to something else. But then it is frustrating because you're just kind of allowing them to break the law, but also just tell you that you can't go somewhere.
Right.
I had a few people asking how you were currently feeling. I know you've been posting stories, giving everyone updates and stuff. Congratulations. You got some good news recently. So, whatever you're comfortable sharing, just kind of take us through that and how everything's been going. Wearing pink, by the way. I'm wearing pink
Yes,
to
I love
support.
it. Thank you. It was definitely rough after my brain surgery. It kind of like everything went downhill from there. I was having headaches really bad. I told my doctor, and she was just kind of like, let's have an MRI done and just kind of put it off. But then I finally had it and went to the emergency room, and I went there and they found a big tumor in my brain. And they were like, if we don't remove this, like you'll die in 3 weeks.
Oh my
And
God.
thankfully it was surgically removable because sometimes it's not, and there's nothing they can do at that point. So I got really lucky then. And after that, it was kind of like everything felt like it was going downhill. Then it was like spreading to my adrenal glands, it spread to my femur, it was just everywhere. And we didn't know that my cancer flipped to triple negative. So I technically wasn't even on treatment for 6 months. So that's why it kind of was spiraling like out of control. And then once we figured out, it flipped to triple negative, I was able to get on the right treatment, and it started working and doing like incredible things. My brain scan, all the spots are like decreasing and going away. All the other spots I had are going away that I had radiation to like my adrenal glands and my femur. I just had a PET scan. So everything is like working, and I just feel so much better. I mean, I was in so much pain. It was miserable.
Yeah.
And like recovery from surgery was like really rough. But now that I'm on like the mend, I feel so good. And I don't have like really any side effects from the meds I'm on, which is like amazing. On like oral chemo, and then I get like an infusion of an immunotherapy called Keytruda. So I'm just on those 2 meds right now.
I'm glad that you're feeling better too, because it's been a very long journey for you over the last few years.
Yeah, it has. It's been like, it was exhausting, but I finally feel like I get a break, which is such a relief. Like,
In what ways can service dogs give people a better quality of life, allow them to have more independence and not rely on other people so much, or just be able to do more for themselves in general?
yeah, so it's definitely like, speaking for myself, it's definitely hard for me to ask other people for help. Like, I'm just not someone who asks, for help, and I'd rather like try to do it on my own. So having my service dog has helped a lot because I don't feel like I don't want to say a burden, but like a burden to people, you know. So he definitely helps give me more freedom and independence to do things on my own. Um, and he gives me like strength to be able to try to do things on my own too. And especially like I am a stay-at-home mom. I have no, you know, my husband works until like 8 o'clock at night and leaves at like 8:30 in the morning. So I'm home all by myself all day. So to have like that support from my service dog and to have him here to help me um, is incredible to have. So I don't feel so like nervous and anxious being alone during the day because I know he's here and he helps me tremendously throughout the day.
What tasks does Bosco have?
He does a lot. So he's a medical alert and a non-weight bearing mobility dog. So he'll do like retrievals if I need my meds. Any water he'll retrieve. He knows how to like pick up dropped items. So like I'll get even just like that, I'll get super, super dizzy from just leaning over and picking something up, and then like I'll end up passing out. So
Okay.
not having to be able to like bend down and pick stuff up, you know, he can pick things up, give them to me. He can carry things. Let's see. I'm trying to think. There's like so many that he does. He helps with laundry, put it in the laundry basket for me. He can take my socks off. He can help like do so many things. Take my jacket off if I feel like I'm gonna like pass out because I'm like overheating. So he knows a lot of tasks that I've trained him, and he also is a medical alert. So he's trained to detect low blood sugar too, because I suffer from hypoglycemia. So he's trained to detect low blood sugar. So before I have an episode, he alerts me so I can fix, you know, go drink something or eat something.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know he could turn off light switches too. I remember
Oh,
you
yeah.
posting the videos of him taking your socks off that one time. It's so cool. It's so cool to watch. I love dogs in real life actually doing tasks and training that are clearly super beneficial for you.
Yeah.
My primary training is sport stuff like focus healing, all that stuff, but that's just a hobby. When dogs
Right.
have actual jobs and they're saving people's lives every day, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
What have been your favorite and least favorite tasks to train?
My favorite tasks to train is probably like retrievals. Um, I don't know, Vasco like gets so excited to retrieve things. Like anytime I'm like, oh, go get my meds, he like perks up and like his tail starts wagging and he just like runs and grabs it as fast as he can and runs back to me. Like I just like love seeing how happy he is to work. So I definitely think like retrievals, because that was like that's his favorite thing. I wouldn't say it's my like least favorite thing. It's just like a lot of work and like work goes into it and lots of steps that go into it is training his medical alert, because there's a lot of steps to it. You know, you gotta scent train them with, you know, the like cotton balls with the scent, and then you have to like move to doing a scent wheel, and then you have to teach like the alert part, and then you have to bring the scent like out in different places, and um like train it in like stores so that they like pick up on it in different distracting areas and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
just a lot of work and steps that went into it. It's not like where you were just teaching, you know, the dog to pick something up off the floor.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, that was a lot of work, but it was definitely rewarding.
Do you still reward Vasco when he's doing tasks day to day? Obviously, when you're teaching things, it's a lot of rewards, food and ball, like you said. But how often are you still rewarding him for these things that he's trained to do?
Yeah. So I still will bring like treats out with me, especially like for it. I like to still make sure like we're tuned up on tasks and stuff. Even if some of his tasks aren't needed like on a daily basis, I still bring treats, because if there's a task that we haven't worked on in a while, I still want to make sure that he knows how to do that. Bosco's the type of dog that really feeds off of like affection as a reward,
That's
and
awesome.
praise. So I don't have to bring treats out like every time we're out and rewards and stuff. Um, and he pretty much will task anytime it's needed. And I mean, his workability is so amazing. Like, he just loves to work. And that's the thing I love about German Shepherds is like their workability, that mentality that they want to work and please you. So he definitely feeds off of praise a lot and stuff.
That's super special too, because not all dogs do feed off of praise, so you are a little bit more reliant on rewarding them. And there's nothing like a dog who's doing it for you.
Yeah.
That could be pretty rare. Like again, like you said, the affection, the praise. A lot of dogs are doing things because they know that they're getting food or a toy. What do you think have been some of the pros and cons of using a working line shepherd in service work? Because obviously there are plenty of them out there, but I don't think they're the most ideal breed as a whole. Obviously, there's really good dogs in the breed that have excelled at service work, obviously, for your case too. So, what do you think about that?
It can be tricky because I feel like you need to be prepared that there's a very high chance of washing the dog and it not working out as a service dog. Especially, if you're owner training and it's, you've never even trained a service dog before too. Or, it's your first, and that's your first dog that you're training as a service dog. There can be, a lot of difficulty with that because the breed as a whole can be, not, I don't want to say like not the breed to train as a service dog, but there's a likely that it won't work.
Yeah,
Because I feel like there's a few dogs in the breed that can do it.
yeah,
Just because I feel like, they have so much drive, they have so much energy, and especially because they feed off of your emotions a lot,
yeah,
which
definitely.
can be difficult. So it depends on the type of service dog, especially if it's a psychiatric service dog. Is it going to feed off of your emotions and how is it going to handle that? If you're feeling anxious and nervous, is the dog going to start feeling that too and then not be able to task
Yeah.
and do its job? So that can be difficult too, is, that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think shepherds too, a lot of the times, depending on, again, this is not for the whole breed, but a lot of shepherds have some sort of reactivity issue, whether it be to people or other dogs. I mean, most of them have some sort of defense, some type of nerve. So even well-bred dogs, it could be hard for them to overcome that, especially if they don't have food drive or enough motivation to overcome it in the training. Obviously, I get a ton of shepherds for training, not always the most well-bred ones, but the majority of shepherds I'm getting in for training have either reactivity or aggression. Most of it's just reactivity.
Right.
But a few of them do have some serious aggression. Do you think that that's one of the bigger reasons why a shepherd might get washed?
I definitely think so. That's why one of the reasons why Kona didn't work out. She was reactive as a puppy towards people. She was anxious around them. So that was one of the reasons why that didn't work out for her.
Yeah,
But I definitely see a lot of reactivity in the breed. Um, so that's another thing, like, especially if the problem is reactivity and you are like an anxious person, then how's the dog going to handle that? How would you work through that as a team? Uh,
yeah.
so I could see that being difficult. But yeah, I definitely think that that could be definitely one of the issues that would,
Walk them.
yeah.
So, with that being said, what do you think the most successful and ideal breeds are for service work? If anyone's looking for a service dog right now and you had to recommend them to one or two or three, what would you recommend?
Golden retrievers or labs, um, because of their temperament wise, and they're so commonly used as service dogs, with a higher success rate, I should say, compared to other breeds. Not that other breeds can't work, but definitely labs and goldens, especially, it depends. Are you owner training? Are you going through a program? Most programs, will place labs and goldens as service dogs rather than an off breed. I definitely would recommend those two breeds. Not saying German shepherds can't work out as service dogs. They can make amazing service dogs. It's more risky, um, of the dog washing and not working out. So those are my two top recommendations of breeds.
What do you think about poodles?
Poodles, yes, standard poodles I also they're in the Fab Four breed. So yeah, those I would recommend too. But I think as far as mobility goes, that would be my top recommendation too. But I think as far as labs and goldens go, I think they have like more drive to work as service dogs.
Yeah, I could definitely see. What are the different types of service dogs that someone?
Some people like aren't really aware of all the different types. They just think, guide dog. That's like their immediate thought of a service dog. Um, but there's guide dogs, there's psychiatric service dogs, there's mobility service dogs, there's medical alert service dogs where they could be diabetic alert dogs, they could be seizure alert dogs, they could be cardiac alert dogs. And then there's also dogs that for people who are deaf too. So those could be, alert dogs too.
What are the differences between a service dog, an emotional support dog, and a therapy dog?
Yeah, I get this a lot, especially with Vasco. People think he is my emotional support dog. Um, but I think they get mixed up a lot, or they'll call him like a therapy dog. Um, Especially when I was working, they'd be like, "Oh, Marissa's therapy dog is coming," with her and stuff. But a service dog is a dog that is task trained to help someone, whereas an emotional support dog is a dog that just provides comfort, and it can be any breed. And then a therapy dog is a dog that actually goes through courses of training, and they have to be trained to be therapy dogs, whereas an emotional support dog, they don't have to go through any training, but they're not eligible to have access into places where dogs aren't allowed. But a therapy dog can go into like hospitals, retirement homes, and things like that.
Yeah. I think a huge issue, and I didn't know any better at the time too, is you hear of when you're trying to get into an apartment or a housing complex or whatever the situation is, and they say, oh, like we allow emotional support dogs. You could literally go online. And again, this is before I didn't realize that there was no legality or base to an emotional support dog. You literally search online, you could get these cards printed, like little ID cards. I had them for Simba and Nala when we lived in a townhouse because I literally just looked it up.
Yeah.
You don't have to have any requirements for it. And then because I got those little fake ID cards, which at the time I didn't know were fake, we got into the house that we wanted to get in. Non-service dogs aren't allowed in these places. But a lot of people just genuinely don't know. So for those people, obviously educating them is just really, but there are still people that abuse. Fake service dogs are a huge issue in public.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that you've encountered a ton at this point. I encounter them almost every time I go to Target. Like you go to any store, airports are a huge issue. And that's why a lot of airlines are starting to kind of come out with problems. What are your thoughts on all those things?
It's definitely frustrating, especially for someone who has a legitimate service dog that helps them, and it can be dangerous too because people take, these reactive, untrained dogs who aren't service dogs who just slap a vest on them to bring to the store. And, you walk by, you don't see the dog, and it turns around and is like barking in your dog's face, potentially like nipping your dog, putting you and your dog at risk for, who knows, getting bit or, distracting your service dog even. That's a huge thing too, is, um, you know, taking away that safety net that there's a possibility that your dog could be distracted from this dog that's going absolute nuts, walking by. But for the most part, your dog should ignore. But of course, dogs aren't robots. Dogs are dogs.
Yeah.
They look at the dog and be like, "What the heck? Why are you barking at me, dude?"
Yeah.
But definitely it can be dangerous, and also it's like it's not fair because someone will go into a store, see that, and then the next person does it. So it can be a chain reaction of, oh, well, I saw this person bring their dog into the store, I'm going to do it too. And a lot of times people don't even put a vest, even a fake service dog, they don't put a vest on the dog. They'll just bring the dog in and be like, yeah, it's a service dog. So, and then that also causes issues like for people with legitimate service dogs, the stores like not cracking down on dogs being in the stores, they don't care. There's like, oh, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. I've seen so many service dog teams saying that their dogs have gotten attacked by fake service
Mm-hmm.
dogs, service dog handlers that have been attacked by fake service dogs. Store owners are seeing these fake service dogs and giving every dog a bad reputation, and they don't know the law. They're just going to say, nope, we're okay. You're not allowed to come in.
Right, right.
So what are the ADA laws pertaining to service dogs?
Yeah, so your dog has to be under control at all times. The owners of stores or wherever you are can only ask you two questions. They can ask, is that a service dog? And they can also ask, what task does that dog perform? And you don't have to go into detail and say, oh, this is, my service dog, and he, picks up this item because I have this medical issue, or, you don't have to explain that. You can just say he's a medical alert service dog, or he's a mobility service dog. So you don't have to go into detail and necessarily explain, the tasks that they're trained to do, but legally they can ask those two questions. And then also there's no registration for service dogs. I think that's a lot of times confusing to people, and it's like a misconception that you have to register your service dog, but there's no registration. The dog just needs to be able to perform tasks for someone who has a disability.
With that also, another thing that I think people have a misconception of is that all disabilities are visible, and
Mm-hmm.
that could be another reason why public stores, places might be not as willing to allow you to come in. Or just people in general just making comments or having these opinions and aren't educated on that.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of times people think, service dog, oh, guide dog, the person has to be blind. And that's like their initial reaction. So when they see, someone like me who probably looks like normal to the public out with my service dog, um, they, may make judgments or make comments, but in reality, it's like they're not seeing, I have invisible disabilities. Maybe an hour before that, I had an episode, and then I feel okay enough to walk in the store and go about my day. So they're not seeing what happens behind closed doors. So it can be very difficult when you have invisible disabilities. So I think educating a lot about invisible disabilities is so important. You can't see the inside of someone. You can't know, is this person going to have a seizure?
Yeah.
They could suffer from seizures, or they can suffer from, diabetes, and you can't see that.
My start with service dogs, it was a pretty quick start and finish just because it got to the point where I didn't feel like I needed one anymore. But when I originally got Kiki, which is my third shepherd, my all black female shepherd, I had really, really bad anxiety to the point where, I mean, there was no one specific trigger. I would just have really bad panic attacks throughout the day where I'd be on the verge of passing out. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing all black. Like I can't get my grounding, and I would just have these all the time. So I started training her for service work, and that was a really big thing for me is once I started doing public stuff with her, because again, I'm just look like a normal person, people would devalue the reason why I felt like I needed a service dog. Again, she never completed training. Like once
Yeah.
I started training dogs actually as a profession, my anxiety and my episodes pretty much have gone away. Thank
Yeah.
God. So I just kind of stopped that, but I did do it for like a year. Even trainers would just be like, "Oh, I don't feel like you need a service dog." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Well, how are you going to tell me what you feel like I need just because you don't know what's going on?"
Right.
Like just because I'm out in public working other dogs or doing other things doesn't mean that I don't need a service.
I think it can create access issues too. I definitely think educating on like invisible disabilities is really important. And I also think a big thing, especially like when I'm out with my service dog, a lot of people see my service dog and they're like, "Oh, hi buddy, like, oh, you're so handsome, you're so cute," and like they're always like talking to Vasco. And it's hard because I'm not like a very outspoken person, but sometimes I have to be like, my dog is working, he can't be distracted right now, but thank you. So that's a big thing too, is educating the public, like, don't distract service dogs. They are working, and it's very important that they like stay on track and not be distracted by the public. Some breeds, like for example, my service dog is pretty aloof to people, but once like, people start engaging, like, they could be like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to go say hi to you."
Yeah.
So especially, educating on not distracting service dogs. And I think a lot of times, um, parents need to be responsible and
I
not,
was going to say that.
teach their kids, hey, that's a service dog. When I've been out, like, I do hear parents actually telling their kids, like, that's a service dog. He's working. We can't, like, touch. You can look, but don't touch and stuff. So I have gotten a lot of respectful parents, but sometimes, you know, I've had parents just standing there and their kids literally run up to Vasco and start petting him. And I turn around and I'm like, what are you doing? Where's
Yeah.
your mom? But yeah, I definitely think parents need to like help teach their kids, those are dogs that are working to help, their person, and we can't distract them. So I think that's really important to do.
Yeah, I agree. So, what would your advice be to service dog teams who might not be comfortable with the confrontation of dealing with a situation like that out in public?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely can be difficult, especially if you are more like me, who's like someone who's really shy and doesn't like confrontation, and it kind of like makes me uncomfortable and nervous to say things. But then I have to think about like, no, I need to put myself first and I need to put my dog first. Um, so I think just trying to work on, just being, you don't have to be rude about it, just being friendly and being like, hey, this is a service dog and he's working, thank you though, and stuff. But it can be difficult, but practicing it, even with like family members. I had to do it with my family members too. Like my mom, when I'd be out with Bosco, I'd have to be like, hey, mom, like, you know, leave Bosco alone. I know you love him, but, you know,
Working.
he's working. So even like practicing out with family members can be super helpful too.
Some people have a hard time taking no for an answer. I've
Mm-hmm.
had a few encounters of that, even just taking board and trains to Home Depot or even in dog friendly. When people ask them, even with my personal dogs that are friendly, when we're in public, they're never getting greeted by people. And that's just a personal, I'm just
Yeah.
talking training wise. I want them to be focused on me. I want them to, be neutral to the people. And if there are other dogs and just be neutral to the outside environment. My go-to phrase is always just like, oh, sorry, like we're training, maybe next time. I try to be patient with it, especially if people ask nicely. I'll say like,
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for asking, but I also want the public to be trained. Like dogs aren't there for your enjoyment.
Right.
You see a dog in public, and this is something that you learn the deeper you get into working dogs or service dogs or whatever the case is, because when I was younger, I wanted to pet every dog.
Yeah.
It's a normal thing. If you're a dog lover and you see a dog out, you're like, ooh, I want to pet that dog. Obviously, being a trainer for years now, I don't even bat an eye when I see a dog in public. I'm like, oh, cool, a dog.
Yeah.
I would never ask because one, I don't want to get bit if the dog isn't friendly, and two, like, there's just no need. Have you had situations that have escalated to that point where it becomes an argument, or not really?
I've had people like be rude after I've like said nicely, like, hey, please don't distract him. He's working. People have made like rude and snarky comments after I've said that.
Yeah,
And I just like ignore them and I just walk away. And a lot of times too, like if we see another dog out, I try to avoid them.
yeah,
Um, just because I don't know and I don't want to put us in danger. So we usually just like walk the other direction. There's
yeah,
no need to like walk by. But yeah, I have had people be rude and I remember this one time this like lady and I not got into it, but like I stood my ground and she's like, you know, well, I mean, he's a service dog and he's out, so why can't I pet him? And, even though he's a service dog, he's still like out in the public and what? I'm like, okay, no. Like he is working for me. Please do not distract him. You know, we're going to go about our day. Thank you though. It's just
yeah,
it was I mean she was getting so mad and then she was I did have someone else say that it's mean to have service dogs and have them work. So I had someone like come up to me, and confront me and say like that's so mean to have the dog like working and forcing it to do that and stuff. So I have had comments made. I try to educate them, and then just like ignore them,
Yeah.
if they don't listen.
Yeah. Sometimes you just wonder where the audacity comes. What tips do you have for flying with a service dog?
Yeah, that can be kind of difficult because it's hard to like prepare, going through like TSA and stuff. But I definitely make sure my dog is comfortable being touched all over. That's super important and can be like neutral to that, because when you do go through TSA, either you walk through like the detector thing, or they pat your dog down. And then definitely make sure like your dog is reliable off leash and under control. So working on, you know, that aspect of it too, because you do have to take all their vest off, their collars, everything. They have to be naked walking through.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to unleash them and have them like make sure that they sit, and you recall them to you going through whatever like scanner thing if they're not being patted down. So really working on like off leash reliability, making sure they're under control. um, Practice like on the plane too, you're in tight spaces, making sure your dog can settle in a small space. And it can be uncomfortable, especially like Vasco's a big dog, and there's people sitting next to me on the plane. So, working on even like going to restaurants, fitting them in tiny spaces, being able to lay there for a bit
Yeah.
is cool.
What are your current goals with your dogs? I know you're kind of getting back into sport, which is super exciting. So, what are you
Yeah.
looking to do?
Yeah, so I took a break from doing sport just like after everything I had been through. Um, it was just too much. I just like couldn't deal with it, and I really needed to focus on myself and taking care
Yeah.
of myself and getting better. Um, so obviously I still have Bosco as my service dog. And Valen might dabble in some things. She's, happy still training and doing whatever and going
Yeah.
out on walks and stuff. But I am getting another dog who's coming in May, and she has a lot of potential. She's 2, and we're going to go back to doing IGP and getting started in that. She was training in PSA, so we're going to switch gears.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you importing her or does she live here already?
She was imported, but she, as a puppy, and raised here. So she is going to be just coming here from Michigan, Missouri. Why do I mix those two states up?
One of the M
One
states.
of the M states, yeah. So,
That's so exciting. So you're going to do IGP with her?
yeah, I'm super
Awesome.
excited.
So I thought you had moved to Georgia. Was that in your plans or no? Am I just
Um,
making this up in my mind?
no, we moved to Texas. We
I
moved
remember
to
that.
Texas, yeah, for like a week, and then we were like, oh no, this is not for us.
Oh my
So
gosh.
so we drove like all the way home and stuff in like 24 hours. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, that was a trip. So and
So you're
doing that
staying
while
in California?
yeah, we're staying in California. We have like 5 acres. We have like a whole pasture with like our farm animals, and I love it out here. It's different. I was living in Oceanside, and then we moved to Ramona. So it was definitely a change, but I absolutely I love it.
Yeah, that's where I lived in Oceanside when we lived there, and we used to
Yeah.
train in Ramona sometimes. So especially seeing your property, I
Yeah.
think that's another reason why I thought you moved.
You're not crazy.
So how's the farm life? You're kind of getting a little homestead going on there. Are you going to be like eating your animals, or are they all just pets?
No, they're just like all pets. The only thing we like use is the chicken eggs. So
Cool.
we eat like eggs and stuff. But yeah, they're all pets. I absolutely like love it. We have goats, pigs, ducks, chickens. Yeah, it's just like it's so fun to raise them too. Like it's so funny because, I'm so used to like working with dogs and stuff, and like farm animals is like so different, It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't have to like train them,
Yeah, right? It's
basically. Like
another
they just,
animal, but the
yeah,
expectation's really low.
right. Yeah. So I mean they're great, and like the dogs absolutely love them, and like they're so good around them. You know, like our animals are out and the dogs like are just like cool with them and they all get along great, which is nice, especially having like, you know, high prey drive dogs too,
Yeah.
you
That's what I
know.
was gonna say, especially considering the breeds. You
Yeah.
definitely got a good bunch that you could trust them all out with livestock and stuff.
Yeah.
What is your advice for someone that is a new parent, or maybe they're having a second baby and they have a household full of dogs, and then obviously you have farm animals too? What do you think is the best piece of advice you could give?
Yeah, I mean, definitely people always make that comment like, "Oh, it's going to be so hard having a baby and
Yep.
dog and stuff." But, you know, honestly, it has been easy to imprint like your baby on the dogs. And it hasn't, I mean, it hasn't been hard, but like in the beginning, you know, you definitely have to like teach the dogs, you know, hey, you can't like be all crazy around the baby, you know, you got to be gentle, especially like when your baby starts like kicking and like doing fast movements, you know, they're like, "Oh."
Yep.
um but yeah, I mean, definitely a big advice piece of advice I would say is like make sure that, you know, your child is respectful to your dogs too. That's like a huge thing, you know. A lot of parents will allow their kids to pull their dog's tail and mess with their ears and climb on top of them, but you know, you got to teach your kid, hey, you know, you can't just pull the dog's tail and climb
Yeah.
on top of them. Like, you need to be respectful of the dog too, because that can make them uncomfortable, you can hurt them and stuff.
Yeah.
So from a young age, I would like grab Brindley's hand and I would like tell her, nice, nice, and gentle. So now she goes up to our dogs and she'll just like pet them and she goes, nice, nice, nice. So she knows, you know, I tell her nice and she knows to gently pet them and stuff. So teaching them from a young age is like super important.
Well, thank you for coming on. You're a superwoman.
Thank you for there.
You're welcome. You're definitely a huge inspiration for so many people for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, your health journey and just the fact that, you've still been so strong throughout everything that you're going through. You're still with the dogs, raising a child. A lot of people wouldn't have the strength to do.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.